Once again, happy December everyone. Next up, we have the fresh snow Pokemon, Glaceon. The chilliest evolution has been around since Generation 4, where it had a unique evolution process, needing to level up while in proximity to an ice-covered rock near Snow Point City. Today, we'll look as if Glaceon was able to Mr. Freeze the competition in the cold world of the competitive scene. So, how good was Glaceon actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Base 130 special attack and stab ice beam are a fierce combination. And sadly for Glaceon, that's about all it has going for it. Ice is a notoriously awful defensive type, offering nearly no useful resistances and hampering Glaceon with a plethora of bad weaknesses to have, notably Stealth Rock, as well as fire and fighting moves. This made it incredibly tough for Glaceon to get on the field, especially since its speed is thoroughly unspectacular. And even if it did get into a position where it could fire an attack off, it struggled to leave a significant mark, because as strong as its ice beam was, it wasn't enough alone. It got stuffed by incredibly common Pokemon such as Steels, Waters, Blissey, and the special defense boosted Tyranitar. Glaceon's coverage options were miserable. It was restricted to Shadow Ball, which was nice for Starmie, but did even less than Ice Beam to the others, and Hidden Power Ground, which only helped with Heatran and Jirachi. This was nice, but not nearly enough to make up for Glaceon's other issues, which were plentiful and massive. As a result, it dropped to UU, and there it still struggled. Milotic, Registeel, Chansey, and bulky Arcanine completely stuffed it, and all were incredibly common. It had to pick between Hidden Power Grass for Milotic and Ground for Registeel and Arcanine, which was still unreliable given how often they were used together. Glaceon was decent against offensive teams since they packed less bulky water types such as Azumarill and Feraligatr that both struggled to switch into Glaceon's powerful Ice Beam, and they couldn't threaten it back too immediately thanks to Glaceon's great natural defense stat that also notably let it take a big hit from something like Swellow or Torterra, thus enabling Glaceon to check something important and get a decent forced KO trade on the opponent. But this niche was not nearly notable enough to make Glaceon a commonly used UU Pokemon, nor was the Choice Scarf set cleaning up for Hail teams. Talk about specific. Thus, Glaceon ended up in NU. It had severe competition there from Jynx as an offensive ice type, as Jynx's high speed and access to sleep were quite useful. However, Glaceon's raw power mowing through Regirock and Shadow Ball, cutting down Slowking in addition to actually being able to switch into Pokemon like Sandslash thanks to its perfectly decent natural bulk, set it apart to the point where it was not at all outclassed. It was easier to use Jynx for sure, but using Glaceon effectively would reap rewards Jynx wasn't quite capable of. It wasn't stardom, but it was something legitimate, which was about as good as you could ask for after Glaceon's rough debut generation. Not only did Generation 5 OU overwhelm Glaceon even more easily with its huge increase in power and speed, while still effortlessly capable of switching into it, it also introduced Kyurem, which was entirely superior to Glaceon in every possible way. But even if Kyurem didn't exist, Glaceon wouldn't have been anywhere near OU. It couldn't find a place in the much stronger UU either, and it wasn't even usable in the new RU, thus dropping to a lower overall placement by finding itself in NU again. And unfortunately, it wasn't too good even there. It was mostly outclassed by Jynx again, due to the power of Gen 5 Sleep, and Rotom Frost due to its excellent secondary electric typing that gave it incredible offensive coverage in its stabs alone, as well as a useful electric and flying resistance, Levitate for an excellent ground immunity, and superior move pool and speed. Even after Jynx was banned, Glaceon didn't have much impact. It 2-hit KO'd nearly the entire tier and threatened a 1-hit KO on certain very crucial Pokemon such as Tangela and Golurk. But so did Rotom Frost, which in addition to packing the aforementioned superior qualities, was not at all countered by the tier's omnipresent wall Alomomola, which completely and utterly stuffed Glaceon over and over again. Rotom's ability to effortlessly Will-O-Wisp and Volt Switch against Regice, which incidentally was another superior ice type, was something else Glaceon could not do at all. Sad as it was, there really was no scenario in which case Glaceon was the best overall Pokemon for the job. It was just outclassed. Glaceon wasn't really part of the overall Gen 5 VGC metagame, but there was certainly something to be said for the wallop packed by its powerful Spread Blizzard, backed up by Hail for perfect accuracy and extra chip damage. Blizzard cleaved through the numerous Ice-weak Pokemon present throughout the metagame who were often paired together, such as the infamous duel of Zapdos and Garchomp. Glaceon was also bulky enough to take a hit or two as well, especially when invested in HP, as it was on one of its common sets, the Trick Room Hail Abuser, using Iron Ball as the item to ensure it would be slower than the opposite opposition. With fake tiers, it ensured bulkier Pokemon like Cresselia, Suicune, and Tyranitar would not be shrugging its attacks off, which could be abused by both Glaceon and its partner Pokemon. It was a really small niche, but Nicholas Saman impressively used Glaceon to reach 15th at the US Nationals, so well done to him for the placement with the lesser used Pokemon. It should come as no surprise that Glaceon was as forgotten as possible in Gen 6, with it being weak to everything in OU and whatnot. Plus, there was the fact that Kyurem Black was realistically going to do whatever Glaceon might do, and a whole lot more on top of it. It should also come as no surprise that this extended to the lower tiers, with the constantly increasing power trickling down to them. As a result, Glaceon found itself in the newest lowest tier, PU, and so did Rotom Frost and Regice. Rotom was one of the tier's best Pokemon once more, with a laundry list of excellent attributes that let it cover a high portion of the metagame defensively and bypass common ice checks offensively, while Regice came into its own with its tanky Protect set, using its excellent bulk to shrug off special attacks from nearly the entire tier, including Glaceon's, while its Bolt Beam coverage hit just about the entire tier hard in return. Glaceon didn't have either Pokemon's defensive use and thus struggled to switch in consistently. Glaceon also didn't have either Pokemon's coverage, which led to it being countered by one of the two Pokemon and checked well by another, and overall Glaceon was just outclassed by both. It was an inconsistent one-trick pony, trying to keep up with consistent, multi-talented horses. It was a great example of how strength is far from the only factor in what makes a Pokemon good, even when being able to deal damage is a big part of the role. If you can't consistently get on the field to use the power, or be able to do anything to your common counters, you're no good. Sad as it is, there was no reason to use Glaceon if your foremost goal was to win, even all the way down in PU. Rotom and Regice were just far better. Even Cryogonal had more use despite not being an offensive threat thanks to Rapid Spin, and with its great special defense and recover, it too countered Glaceon, using it as an opportunity to get a spin off. Hidden Power fighting could seriously sting these Pokemon, as well as steals like Probopass and Clang, but the significant prediction factor was just one more obstacle that made Glaceon tough to use. The other Pokemon did not have this issue. The one thing Glaceon could do that these Pokemon couldn't was check Calm Mind Dual Shin, with its automatic crit Frost Breath, cutting through its special defense boost. But this wasn't nearly enough to justify using such an inferior overall Pokemon. One was better off running an actual Dual Shin counter alongside one of Rotom and Regice. Glaceon was once again not really a VGC Pokemon, though this time with Hail not really being part of the metagame and Ice Weak Pokemon not being as omnipresent, it would be difficult to find any sort of legitimate use for it. Having said that, Jacob Hardenbauer managed to reach 45th with it at the US Nationals in 2014, and we unfortunately don't have any more information than that. But good job to Jacob. It's unlikely anyone would have otherwise thought of Glaceon at all that season. By now, it was a foregone conclusion that Glaceon would end up in the bottommost tier. OU was the usual conglomerate of Heatran and Tyranitar, alongside new faces like Magearna and Toxapex, as well as fast Z move power everywhere, of which Kyurem Black was a great abuser, and Glaceon had absolutely no glimmer of hope there, nor in any tier until PU, where it was outclassed once more, this time by the entirely superior Aurorus, who could accomplish a lot more by virtue of its secondary typing, providing additional stab and coverage, specifically against fire types, as well as some actually useful resistances to normal and flying. It also had a great move for rocks and steals in earth power. Glaceon did pack a notably high special attack stat, but both Aurorus' abilities increased its damage output, with Snow Warning's Hail allowing it to safely use Blizzard, as well as providing chip damage on its switch-ins, while Refrigerate was a straight up boost. So in practice, the power difference wasn't too influential at all, and Aurorus' other qualities meant it was a better overall Pokemon. The one thing Glaceon could do that Aurorus couldn't was attempt to sweep with Z's Celebrate. However, even this set was not at all good or usable. Glaceon's unimpressive typing and bulk meant setting up safely was difficult, which was exacerbated by the setup being one use only. Furthermore, it was still plagued by coverage issues that prevented it from sweeping, and it was revenge killed by the incredibly common Choice Scarf Primate. This set was just not worth using, and by extension, neither was Glaceon. The player base recognized this, as reflected in its usage dipping so low that it couldn't even be considered PU. Glaceon was officially slapped with the lowest dishonor for a fully evolved Pokemon, untiered, and as such was not recommended for use in any single tier. Glaceon still was not at all a true part of the metagame, but it still managed to eke out the slightest of appearances, more likely owing to its status as a fan favorite than its competitive merits, because it didn't have the latter at all, even with Alolan Ninetales bringing Hail back. And actually, in 2018, and I apologize if I butcher your name, Pavel Pakuratov reached second with Glaceon alongside Mega Abomasnow at the Russian Nationals, finally giving Glaceon a truly solid VGC placement. And unfortunately, that was as far as it went. But considering how badly Glaceon had been beaten up on prior to this point, this could be seen as an absolute win. And that's it. So how good was Glaceon actually? The answer is, yeah, not really very good at all. Its history has been one of consistently being outclassed even in the lowest of the lower tiers. Glaceon is a shining example of how awful pure ice typing is defensively and how important coverage is even with the impressive power. And as a result, it's the worst evolution competitively. It had some use in VGC thanks to its powerful spread blizzard, targeting important metagame threats, but even there it was as niche gets. Perhaps if the fabled Diamond and Pearl remakes come out, Glaceon will return with some much needed buffs and vengeance to go with them. But as of right now, you can go find one in the wild area right now when it's snowing or something. I mean, at least it looks pretty cool there. Thanks for watching, everyone. As always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Glaceon? What would you give it to buff it up or to help it with its pure ice typing? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, shout outs to our patrons for continued support of our videos. And thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.